Welcome, everyone, to another Insight Jam session. Our topic today is evaluating the business value of agentic AI. As you know, agentic AI holds unbounded promise to automate business processes and turbocharge corporate productivity. But before rushing headlong into this brave new world, it's imperative that we evaluate the business value of agentic AI. This is challenging because the technology is so new and untested, but early implementations show what's possible and how to leverage the technology for maximum gain. We have two experts today, Elliott Cordo, founder of Data Futures, and Michael Canzaneri, co-founder of Data SQRL. Sorry about that.
You got it.
And they will help us examine how to identify and prioritize agentic AI use cases, how to establish success metrics, and how to manage expectations, among other things. So welcome. So maybe we can start by having each of you take 30 seconds to introduce yourselves. Why don't we start with you, Elliott?
Yeah. Hi, Wayne. So I am 30 year in the software and data engineering tech leadership space. Solving, difficult enterprise data transformation processes is kind of my thing. I've been solely focused on, kind of solving for, helping to bring software engineering maturity to data, as well as in the past few years, really seeing how we can help adopt, AI into organizations in a meaningful way. It's a quick one. And I'm the founder of Data Futures, a boutique consultancy in the New York metro area.
All right, the all-important credential today. All right, Michael.
Thanks for having me, Wayne. Michael Canzaneri, often referred to as Cans. I am the co-founder of Data Squirrel, SQRL.
I'll get that right sometime, Michael. Sorry about that.
No worries. 3-time unicorn veteran as well, and an ex-Gartner advisor.
Oh, terrific. Well, listen, let's dive in. And we'll start with you, Michael. Things are moving so fast in this space. It's hard to know what's hype and what's real. So what would you say, as an ex-Gartner guy, what is the state of adoption for agentic AI today?
Super low. I actually just posted today on Substack about the AI first maturity curve. And the idea is really simple. It's where your company lies along the adoption curve of AI. If you start with awareness, you move up to embedded, agentic, and then autonomous, which is the top layer. So if you have that curve going all the way up, and value as one of the indicators of what you're getting from AI, I would say everyone is really bunched in the awareness phase. And what you're even seeing is, I think McKinsey posted it not too long ago, about 80% of AI projects are failing to show value. Not surprised by this. And I say in my Substack post, it was the same number for digital transformations.
Yeah.
When I was at Gartner, almost the exact same number. It typically varies between 80 to 90%. And I talk about lack of vision. And where I'm actually seeing a lot of vision is, oddly enough, athletic departments.
No kidding.
No kidding. I'm working with several very large universities, and the athletic directors, or ADs there, are fantastic because they're almost like the best clients you can possibly have, because they have this perspective of, I know how to spell AI, I just don't know anything else about it. So they're really inquisitive, asking questions. And since they're very revenue generation focused, they're not going to waste time with these experiments that don't lead places. So typically what I say to them is, you ship loops, not demos. So ship a decision loop. If you're going to focus on something, for instance, increasing ticket revenue, figure out the decisions that lead to someone increasing the likelihood of them buying a ticket or a season ticket or a ticket plan. Because AI agents alone don't create value. Closed decision loops do. I'm working with a travel company that's our main focus. Okay, what decision loop can we deliver on? Because typically when you talk to a lot of people about AI, they're like, oh, it could do this, it could do that, and everything gets unfocused. So thinking about it in terms of that kind of focus is where I'm shooting people, but the overall adoption rate is really haphazard and a lot of failures from what I'm seeing just subjectively.
Yeah. So just by implication, it sounds like, I'm going to speculate that the failures from your position would be that they're not defining use cases very well.
Yeah, they're not defining use cases very well. And again, the same thing happened with ERP implementations, which were masked in the digital transformation trend. Because that's all digital transformation really was. It was a glorified ERP implementation.
Yeah.
And I would go into customers and I would say, well, why are you doing this? And they're like, we don't know. That was like the C-suite. Like,
we needed a transformation initiative.
We needed a transformation initiative. And it really came down to implementing a new ERP. So you're correct in that they're really not defining what value is. And I typically say it's 4 things. It's really simple too. It's you're either making money, saving money, protecting money, or some combination thereof.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So it sounds like, as traditional businesses are slouching into application of new technologies, right? So Elliott, just curious, from your perspective, what are you seeing for adoption? Are you seeing the same thing Michael is?
Yeah, so similar, right? I think there's some progressive companies that are moving forward with useful and value creating AI solutions, but there's a lot that are much like Michael described and are described in the McKinsey report. I think something, we've all, I gave you my heritage or my tenure in the industry. We've all seen these technology regimes, right? Where a lot of times the solution is leading it, it's a solution led approach versus people defining like what they're actually trying to solve for and like what the outcomes that they're trying to drive, right? So like, hey, we need to have an AI strategy, so let's do AI stuff. And to some extent, it's useful, right? Because it does create like this kind of ideation phase with organizations, exploration of the art of the possible. Like a lot of the really interesting solves in AI are problems that businesses have almost written off. Like you almost have to pull them back into it because like, yeah, we couldn't do that thing because we didn't have enough data to train it, or it would be a fleet of humans, and like it just like written off, like out of their headspace, right? So there is like some value in kind of like the solution led, kind of experimentation and kind of like exploration and R&D, right? To kind of awaken these sort of things, but too many companies are getting stuck there, right? And they do a POC and then they peter off, or ultimately they might not be successful because they either, and we'll get into that too, they didn't either lay proper foundations or incrementally build the proper foundations, or they were just too focused on the solution, right? Versus the actual outcomes that they're trying to drive.
Would it be unfair to say that the majority of companies that have dipped their toe into AI have simply just deployed copilots for everybody? And, the word on that is, well, you tell me, is that, are those providing value or not?
That is what I'm seeing. And when they do deploy something, it's typically a chatbot.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually really dangerous from a customer experience perspective. And I don't mean dangerous like in you're going to lose the company, but I think you're really going to impact your customer experience. And there's several airlines, for instance, who have done this. And it is an enraging experience, to say the least.
As opposed to the baseline of dealing with an airline?
I've always had good luck with them. They've always been very good with me. And I travel kind of frequently, and maybe it's because I'm a sweetheart on the phone and I'm not yelling at people.
That can help. That can go a long way. Oh, so you're saying the early implementations, and I saw this too, were like customer service oriented external chatbots. But I'm thinking what I'm seeing is that most companies, they first start by implementing a copilot for every one of their employees. And I don't know if that's a good thing or not. I think they have to do a lot of preparation. They have to create a usage document, right, and train users what's right to do and what's not good to do with these things. And I'm wondering, in your experiences, have you seen those co-pilots, internal co-pilots, pay off?
Yes, in short. But Elliot, I'll let you take.
Yeah. So I think the co-pilots that we all like, think of, whether it be the Microsoft offering or, some of the coding assistants, you choose the one that is most helpful. Like I'm a little closer to like, on the software development and kind of like engineering end that people are finding a lot of value out of it. However, there's a bunch of traps, right? You've got L1, L2 engineers who are vibe coding their way into unsupportable and kind of like curious situations, right? um and it's enabling a lot of folks to go faster, but to some extent at what cost? Like I think that there's almost like an inversion that we can go fast and how hopefully a little more right with AI, right? Like all of the undifferentiated, all the heavy lifting, which often gets deferred to deliver function and product, right? So deliver working software that meets the product use case is the most important thing. And what happens to all the other stuff that's also important? And you get into a question of ROI versus value, the valuable stuff, right? That we're going to have good unit testing, that we're going to have documentation, that we're going to be adhering to coding standards and everything else. So, I think smart organizations that do have, a good point of view on use and how AI is built into like their workflow and are using it to supplement some of these valuable secondary operations of software development are seeing some real value, and not ROI, but value. ROI is going to come, right? That's more of a secondary measure, right? So I think, long story short, I think people that are using it correctly and not just dumping it into their organization are definitely seeing value.
Yeah, certain use cases internally seem to be taking up AI in a productive way, like developers for sure.
Oh yeah.
I think marketing is using it quite a lot, and research. So, yeah, those are productive areas for it. It does get a little bit dicier when you start to turn this externally and have your customers interact with a chatbot. Then you have to really know what you're doing and test it and have a lot of safeguards built into it, from what I understand.
Mesh is a material built to be strong and flexible. Mesh is an interaction creating alignment and power. Mesh is a behavior that brings people together. And now Mesh is a new model of trust networks from InsightJam, driven by enterprise experts for professional decision makers who recognize the moment we are in, where the world of work collides with AI. The greatest mesh of all.
All right, so those are some of the business challenges, I think, that we've discussed. Make sure you have good, strong use case, and probably have guardrails whenever you develop something that's for external usage. What about technical challenges? What are you guys seeing there that's making this hard or not? Maybe it's easy for some companies and harder for others.
Yeah, I can start that one off. I think one of the common technical challenges that I see, which is a challenge for many organizations, in general. So like, as we know, a lot of companies and especially like large enterprises have data problems, right? It's not fully solved, and they've been on that journey, and they're on that journey now. In fact, I'd say this year there's been tremendous momentum in terms of like, back pressure for these sort of projects to have better quality data, have reasonable data models, reasonable fit for purpose operating models for dealing with data, all the way through. Like, a bunch of people trying to achieve that dream. And I think, folks that have, you know, been on this journey and have developed some of those muscles and perhaps some of those assets, like, are well positioned, right? And like, this is like, it feels silly to like use this phrase again and again, but AI can be a garbage in, garbage out sort of situation. So what I'm finding a lot of times is when we have an AI use case, customers are also often being forced at least incrementally to address some of these problems.
Yeah.
So like, hey, we want to create like this AI enrichment pipeline, and I'm like, okay, cool. Where's your order data? And like, where's your master data for like product and, ship to or whatever? And they just look at you blankly, and it turns out it's in 15 different places, and there's no domain linkage between the data, and, subject matter expertise is scattered, right? So it creates, a kind of a huge lift for folks. And then, just to be thoughtful of time, if I skip to the other end, which is AI tooling, right? So AI tooling is like somewhat unfamiliar, right? And it's evolving quickly. And, there's also like a bit of impedance in terms of like who gets the charge, like who's been charged with, building these AI use cases. And very often it's data teams, and developing AI feels a lot more like software development in many ways. So, there's some hurdles there in terms of like tooling, skill set, know-how, and even like infrastructure and access to the infrastructure that they need to build these solutions. So, no shortage of challenges.
Yeah, it seems that if you haven't done your homework as a company and laid a solid data foundation with proper models and master data and linkages between data sets to build, a very competent agentic AI application, it's going to take you 2, 3, or 4 times longer than otherwise. But if you have all those things in place, then you're essentially and maybe predictive models you probably want to put there. You want to have your unstructured data available, the ability to search that, and even some transactional capabilities. So if you have all those in place, it's still going to take a long time to make a really good application from what I've seen from our experience at DaleWare. Yeah. But if you don't have those things in place, it literally will take you 10x more, I think.
And it doesn't have to be like okay, well, we got to like stop on moving forward so that we can build the Uber, kind of platform and solve all of like our data needs. But it requires like incremental attention, right? And just the right amount of kind of effort in these areas to achieve goals. Like, to ignore them, you certainly are going to have like huge hurdles in having a successful, time building an AI application.
I think that also, if you're trying to make, my old college coach used to say, you can't make chicken salad out of chicken shit. So if you're trying to make an agentic AI application, you don't have the stuff in place, the AI is still going to try to do something with it, right? And that's when you increase your risk. It's going to.
You've officially got me off garbage in, garbage out to chicken shit. I like that one.
Yeah, you can imagine how inspiring our coach was when we felt we're fat frequently. Anyway, he was a character. You loved him or hate him. Anyway, Ken, any thoughts on the technical challenges on your end?
Yeah, but I'll add. I should say, let me add on to it, because I think I'm seeing exactly what Elliott has been seeing, and what the people whom I've been talking to quickly realize is they don't have their data together, or their data act together. And what's worse is they don't have the security and governance around the data together. And that's what's really slowing a lot of these projects down for them. So when I walk into a customer, I typically ask around governance, security, and, do you understand the rules around who could see what?
Right.
Simple questions, very simple questions, but they bring up a lot of thorns for a lot of organizations.
Do you think the lure of AI and its value is enough to get companies to kind of take the next step and build out those infrastructural components that are required to do it? Or will they just say, it's not worth it. It's too hard. Take us too long.
No, I think it's the we got to get our act together. And the reason being is simply from a perspective of, if we don't do AI, we won't be around tomorrow. So it's causing them, and the really good ones don't do the big bang approach, right? They're like, let's get one thing right here. And they approach it from that perspective, and they say, okay, what does the data look like? What questions we want to ask of the data, and who can see what? And let's just do it for this one, again, decision loop.
Right. So they'll dive in, not so much because they see the value, but maybe because they're afraid of falling behind, right?
Yes.
Fear is a better motivator.
Well, they're both, but it's typically the fear that's motivating.
Fear. What about you, Elliott? Any thoughts on whether people will give up or plow through?
No, I think I'm seeing the same thing. They're incrementally solving, or like in some cases they're trying to think big and solve small. Like, okay, here's the broader framework we're going to solve for the specific use case. But some are making very like tactical decisions about like, okay, we need to get this done. How do we solve for just this thing? Because many organizations do see this as table stakes, and in many cases they think they're right. Because and maybe what fuels a little bit of my AI optimism, that like it becomes a new baseline, right? That these organizations are going to be using AI to solve some of these problems, and so will their competitors, right? So for sure, I'm seeing things similar. I think and we're talking about like data challenges, and we started to migrate into like a little bit more of the business side, but like a lot of times what I find is that in this process, we're also trying to solve like maybe like broken business processes or poor business processes. So we're like, oh, so this is where, we're trying to incorporate AI into this thing, but like the people aren't either prepared, or maybe, the processes were suboptimal. The processes are not prepared. And then, all these other, kind of boundaries in terms of systems, right? And are the systems prepared? And if we address security and governance, right? So, it's interesting that you end up, and I think this might be unique to some of these AI use cases, that you end up solving like a broad swath of issues. Like sometimes like a data issue and maybe a little bit of security, but here you're, depending on what you're building, you end up addressing a lot of things head on, which again is like an unnatural motion for a lot of people, especially like this is like a data and analytics team that's trying to implement an AI solution.
Yeah, I have a customer who I'm working with who really doesn't own any data. And they are looking at this as a springboard to essentially build their own operational data brain, which I find interesting. So it's really a shift in their strategic thinking, and it's their hands being forced because of AI and in their industry, which is logistics, by the way.
All right. So we've established that fear is a big driver, and may be big enough to get people to do the things they've avoided doing for decades in terms of data infrastructure and process optimization, right? So this is kind of gets into my next question, which is, how do you manage business expectations? I suppose it depends on the business. If they've done their work, then I think your conversation for what they can expect is going to be a lot different than if they haven't done that work. So is there anything you would say to a business executive who has read all the airline magazines and is gung-ho on AI or terrified of falling behind?
Don't forget golf course conversations.
Yeah. I go back to what I said earlier around shipping loops, not demos.
Yeah.
And it's really helpful. Again, working with a customer, we got into this conversation about what we can deliver. And as these conversations always do, they devolve into, oh, we could do this, we could do that, we could do this. And the way to bring them all back is the decision loop. Well, how does that inform this decision loop? And if you're wondering what the decision loop looks like, it's really simple. It's like, who owns the decision? What allowed actions can the AI take? How do you roll back? What are the success metrics? And here's the critical thing. What's the feedback loop? Because I think as we progress through this, you'll see your product no longer has a moat in terms of first mover. It no longer has a moat in terms of IP. The only moat you may be able to create is a better feedback loop. So when you come to saying, okay, what are we going to do here? Think in terms of the decision loop and then say, okay, what can we deliver 30, 90, 180 days?
So the loop starts with the decision maker. And I assume one thing you didn't say was what are the decisions they need to make, but I assume that
right, the allowed actions the AI can take.
Okay, that's the
Right,
action.
that's what, yeah. And what you'll see, I think you'll start seeing this pop up even more, and it become kind of nomenclature around building these systems. I call them either you're going to see it now again just a little bit later if you'd like, decision control planes or composable action models.
All right. So are you saying that you want the AI to always take action? Because I'm not sure a lot of this would actually be completely comfortable that maybe spit out a report or make a recommendation, but not actually.
No, if you look at the way I think the best companies are doing it, they start with assisting humans, right?
Right.
You always have that human in the loop until you've built up enough muscle memory that the AI can then be a more autonomous.
Yeah.
But the best way to start is assisting humans or humans in the loop. And then as you build up that muscle memory for the AI, you can then give it more leeway to make certain decisions for you.
Unlock better leads with custom webinars by Solutions Review.
And welcome to the Solution Spotlight featuring Broadcom, Alteryx, IBM, Impetus, Infor, Sigma, Radware, Infinidat, Revenera.
Boost your brand with our exclusive virtual events featuring in-depth use cases, live product demos, and interactive Q&A sessions. All broadcast live to LinkedIn, YouTube, and Zoom. Straight from our state-of-the-art production studio or on location at industry tech conferences. Get the full package, custom promotional graphics, polished video production, and our massive social media reach. Fill your sales funnel with high-quality targeted leads and contact us today by visiting solutionsreview.com/virtual events.
Next question. What is the best way to prioritize use cases? We started out talking about use cases and the importance of doing that, but there's a lot of, contention within an organization about, what can be done, what should be done, who's going to do it. Do you have any recommendations for how to prioritize those use cases?
Yeah, I can take a first crack at this. So I think that, some of the use cases that were, so it depends. So I think some of the use cases which I've been involved in, just organically end up being, at least partly like an AI solution. Like I don't know if you're seeing this as well, Michael, but AI is permeating like a lot of the solutions that we're building, right? So I think it's a matter of like kind of looking at the roadmap and these are based on business priorities, right? And seeing how AI can actually help, right? It could be like the tactical stuff that like, hey, we can maybe go a little faster, maybe we can build a little better, but it could be that like there's features that we can unlock within these existing initiatives, right? One that I always think of as we're working on this data monetization use case, right? And the data monetization use case was going to happen no matter what, right? This was a product that they wanted to get into market, but significant challenges on data, right? Classification, standardization, mapping to industry codes, et cetera, et cetera. No labeled data, no way to do it, right? But assessing that kind of solution and the outcomes and kind of, understanding the capabilities of AI, we're able to build a much better product, right? 85, 90% classification accuracy, right? So this product's in market and it's doing well. Getting back to ROI, value, right? The product is more valuable. somewhat intangible ROI, right? But we were able to create a better product. A little bit of a tangent, but like AI slots into a lot of the work that you already had planned to make it better. And then to some extent, it's returning to what I was saying in terms of like exploring the art of the possible, like doing an assessment with kind of AI in mind and kind of like seeing within the current business processes, challenges and initiatives and business goals where AI can make sense to solve, right? And to some extent, that might be a little bit of R&D, a little bit of art of the possible exploration. Again, a lot of the interesting solves may be written off, sitting in a closet somewhere, right? So it's a little bit of being like a data shrink and kind of like figuring out where AI can fit in, for additional value.
Yeah, I run several assessments around agentic value, and you're hitting on a bunch of them. Like I said earlier, you're either making, saving, protecting money, or some combination thereof. And a lot of times, you also see people ask about actionability, risk, feasibility, as well. So that's kind of what I typically go back to. And a lot of times it's not the sexiest use case that wins to get the prioritization. It's the one that helps an organization get their feet wet, and they can mess up and not have really bad consequences for messing it up.
Yeah. So go after low-hanging fruit, easier to implement, with at least a certain amount of value prove itself out.
Yeah, something that's internal. That, if it craps out, or if the system dies for whatever reason, or somebody can't get the data, the business process can go on without fail.
Right. So that's pretty standard success factors in almost any technical implementation.
Exactly.
No different here. Yeah.
High feasibility and somewhere on the value axis as well.
So just to follow up on that, are there any shortcuts? It doesn't sound like it from what we're talking about. Shortcuts to AI agentic success.
There are some, I think. It goes back to a lot of what we've said in prior episodes. Understanding, your data catalog and using data products is typically one of the best ways to start. And like, again, small. Okay, what's a customer? Where's the data? Let's just get some of the data together, right? Putting contracts on those. This is what you'll be able to expect. Here's who can access them. Here's the data that they can see, that they can't see. And again, the feedback loop. I think those are the three things: products, contracts, and feedback loops that are really easy to implement. Can be shortcuts for you. And then stuff like event logs for training data, which is always easier. And probably retrieval, it doesn't have to be perfect.
Right.
It just has to get started. That's why I was saying, the lower value use cases sometimes get implemented faster simply because they're a good way to start.
Right.
Yeah.
Elliott, what do you think about that?
No, I think that makes sense. I'd also say that like, it's a little tangential, but it seems pertinent that, we've been many companies, not all companies, have been successful with kind of traditional machine learning for some time, right? And we all know, like, people are getting like, a decent R1 score, like maybe like 80% accuracy. It's like the data scientists are high-fiving, like, they just launched a rocket into space, right? And so I think that, like, when we're dealing with like these probabilistic models, we have to have like some more considerations. Humans aren't always good at stuff. ML is not 100% accurate, right? In predictability. So if we can think about measuring AI in a similar way, right? Instead of, I think very often we measure AI against like kind of if then case, like, coded business logic, which is super deterministic, when we really should be comparing it to other stuff, right? other precedents that people are like much more comfortable with, right? In the organization, and that opens up like the solution space in terms of like the quick places to start. Like, hey, like we're going to try to affect product recommendation. Our recommendation engine is already, performing at this level, right? And if we had some human hand curate, it would probably, have this sort of success rate. So like, maybe AI taking the wheel on this is natural and not unlike other things that we're already doing, right?
Okay, so let's shift. I got one more question for you guys. We're going to ask you to pull out your crystal balls. When we started, you both said that the adoption rates and success rates are pretty low. Where do you see agentic AI in 12 to 18 months? Are companies going to get their arms around this and succeed, or something else?
I'll let you go first, Elliott.
That's a good. I think that's really challenging my crystal ball, but I'll give a few thoughts. I think that I think as with any of these kind of like technology regimes, like, as Michael described, the first years, the early adoption on that kind of curve that we're all familiar with, can be a little rocky. I think we're going to see that the success curve is going to start to improve, right? I think for all the reasons that we're talking about it's not the shiny new object. We're going to have emerging, kind of best practices. There's going to be more education, that there's some non-deferrable hard work, that, this artificial intelligence as a, is not going to solve all the problems we need to solve a problem with artificial intelligence. So yeah, I think that companies are going to slowly start, being more successful and proving more value out of artificial intelligence solutions over the next year to 2 years.
Slow but steady progress, which is really the case, right? And they're going to move up the hype curve and figure it out eventually. What do you think, Mike?
I think a lot of things, especially over the next 2 years, and I think it's going to be rocky for a lot of people, companies in particular. But I do think you'll see things like decision control planes, essentially GitOps for agent policy. Think about it as like mission control for what an agent can and cannot do. I also think you'll see these composable action models, which is essentially automation with policy and control, as well as enterprise memory layers or semantic layers. It's that C, or context, in MCP, being able to give these agents the accessible, searchable knowledge of decisions and actions taken in prior experiences, so they can learn from what has happened in the past and make better solutions from an enterprise perspective. And I also think you're going to see real-time and edge agents as well, because you're going to see much smaller language models that are very domain specific, and that they're smaller, they can be pushed out closer to the edge. And lastly, because of all of this, I think you are going to see the drop in cost. I think the cost curve comes down.
Yeah,
but it's interesting. It seems like a lot of the growth that we've had and advancement has come from when the new technology gets embedded in something that organization is already using. That's certainly going to be true with AI. But to build custom AI applications, it seems to me like there might be a growing AI divide, between the companies that are the data haves and they've gotten their data house in order versus the companies that are data have-nots and they haven't. That it's just going to take longer to do something custom that's a competitive differentiator and on the AI front if you just don't have your data in house in order. So
I think there's some truth in what you're saying there for sure. And I think, listen, a lot of organizations are at a similar baseline. So it's going to be how quickly they can kind of rally and put some effort into getting their house in order in the right way, incrementally, almost just in time for the solutions that they're trying to build, for sure.
Right. Well, great. Well, guys, thank you so much for your time today. This was wonderful. I love your insights. And I hope to see you again on this show again.